Mike Tramp, and I'm not going to start the interview off on a bad foot by mentioning the band he's best known for. I'm going to introduce him as a former Tasmanian resident. Now in Tasmania it gets pretty wet, but it doesn't get this cold, does it?
It's it's different when it's raining and you're out in nature than when you're in the city, you know.
And tell us, I mean, a lot of our listeners are in Australia. Tell us about your background with Australia. You lived there for quite some time.
Well, I moved there with my ex-wife and my child in 1991 to start kind of like a new life, and it was a great time when it lasted. And I have a great relationship with Australia, and this year I'm returning to do 2 shows in Melbourne and Sydney on the 14th of February and the 17th of February in Sydney.
Tell us what it was like touring in Australia, because White Line maybe didn't get the airplay in Australia that they did in the US or Europe, so did you have to introduce yourself to Australian audiences? Was it a bit of a harder sell than maybe it is here in London?
Well, actually not. I mean, 80s fans around the world, or 80s fans anywhere there are. It wasn't like I expected a lot in Australia. I just took it on to do some shows while I was there, and so and so. And I knew that it was going to be a long shot to ever really have a career that would really get bigger and bigger and become national. So it was really just say hi to the old mates.
Now this is in Europe. It's sort of an acoustic tour. When you go to Australia, is it going to be just you, a guitar in the audience, or are you going to have a backing band?
It's just me. This is basically sort of like whenever you hear the name Mike Tramp by himself, that's what it will be in the future. Right.
Okay. So, and what's the alternative in future? Like, what do you think? If it's not just Mike Tramp, are you going to form another band under another name, or is it no plans?
Well, of course there's plans. It's really just a matter of separating the different things. It's separating, the things that, when I'm doing new music and when I'm performing under my own name. Not like I have performed under any other name but my own name. It's sort of just where I want to be heading, in the direction of playing the songs in an acoustic format and staying with that. And when I move out with a band, I will be doing, the White Line or the Freedom Nature stuff, full band.
Right, okay. We're going to divide this interview up last week. Mike, we've left this until the second part of the interview, but you said that last time that if you do play with a band in future, then you'll be playing Freak of Nature, White Line songs. Any more detail about what that band might be, who might be in it, where you might play?
Well, here and there. I mean, the fact of the matter is that when I go out and play those songs, I'm playing classic songs that people already know. Yeah. So it's more about giving, the fans as close to the sound as possible without it being the original band. When I do my Tramp, it's about writing new stuff. It's about evolving. It's about growing. It's about moving on with writing new songs. But on the band level, there's no space to write a new rock album. There's just no space in the world for that, for something original. And I'm not recording any new material under the name White Line or Freak of Nature. That's only going out and playing the classic songs.
Right, so there are obviously some bands now who are releasing new material, and there's a lot of bands who've given up. I mean, from the era we're talking about. Cinderella haven't released anything new in 15, 20 years, but other bands like Bang Tango, for instance, are putting out new records every year. You obviously decided that it isn't a good idea. Why is that?
Because there's a big difference in going up and playing classic White Lion songs and then presenting new White Lion songs when White Lion isn't there. Because the sound of White Lion when it came to songwriting was Vita Brada and Mike Tramp, and that can't be changed, and that will never happen again. So I am not desperate in that way that I just find somebody else and then write some songs. I did that once with an album called Return of the Pride. And I really love the album, but it's just not the sound of White Lion. So whenever I play White Lion, I just want to play the old songs. And that'll be more like just like a live show to entertain and enjoy that.
You said that you actually had some regret about Return of the Pride. When did the regret kick in? Because it got good reviews. I think a lot of your fans liked it and they thought it was reminiscent of the original sound.
Well, I appreciate what you're saying there. It's just when I look back about it, it's just, I never really wanted to record under the name White Lion again. because so much of the sound and the songwriting came between Vito and I. It's a different story being up there playing the old songs note for note, but writing new material in 2012 with, you know, keeping in mind that the band came from the 1983-84 when we started up, and then having to jump back there and develop that sound that existed because the band has not grown, because the band ended in 91 and then all those years. And I just really do think that it's important that that you reflect how you feel. This is not making a new Star Wars movie where there's already a concept and you know the actors and the characters have to be certain within certain, you know, perimeters. You know, writing a new album is not sitting and baking bread. It's like the idea has to come to you. And that works well when it's Mike Tramp writing an album and I'm writing new songs. But White Line has restrictions. It's known for an image, it's known for a sound and so on. So you're limited already, and that's tough when you go in to do that. And I don't want to be that as a songwriter, because then it becomes like a prefabricated product. Then you get Kiss. And that's not what I want to do in this case. Yeah,
last question, we'll go to another song, but doing some research for this interview, the picture that was painted of Vito was someone who is sitting back and maybe, you know, it keeps making legal threats every time you use the name, but doesn't want to do anything. He must be a multi-millionaire if he can afford to sit back and do nothing. I mean, well, why is that situation arisen? Why has it arisen in your mind?
I don't think he's a multi-millionaire by any means. The man has not stood on a stage, written a song or recorded a song, done an interview since the 90s, or since 91. I really cannot speak about his behavior. He chooses to do what he chooses to do. I choose to live.
Okay, final part of our interview with Mike Tramp. We want to thank him for his time, and maybe we've talked about what's happening soon, and his tour of Australia is one of the things that's happening soon. Let's go back a little bit. What was it like, and how quickly did it happen with Pride when you broke in America, and how did it change your life, and how much do you think you had to do with it, and how much of it to do with the business of rock and roll, what was popular at the time? What was it like to just for the album to break so big?
Well, the thing is that the fans or those watching it from the other side that we're watching it from is looking at it as almost being something that suddenly just came and the day before it wasn't there. For us, it was many years in a basement in Brooklyn, New York. It was many years of rewriting the songs. It was many years of touring the clubs and so and so. And it happened in a natural form where, you know, little by little, you know, the payback came from hard work, from a lot of touring and fans and loyalty. And then, you know, that worldwide success came, you know, when you get, you know, a top 10 hit, when you get an MTV hit and stuff like that, and now you can sort of watch it around, you know. But White Line basically broke because we were a hard touring band.
And what about the follow-up, Main Attraction? I mean, the cover of Radar Love was big.
Big Game you're talking about.
Yeah, Big Game. Sorry. Big Game. I mean, how do you the follow-ups? I mean, how do you look back on that? Was there record company pressure to do certain things? Were you happy with them? Would you do anything differently?
I mean, I don't know if it really was record company pressure, but you got to realize that, like somebody said, that you got, you know, your entire life to write your first album, and you got a week to write your next, and that's sort of the situation of Big Game and Pride, where we had played Pride live in the clubs like for 3 years before we even recorded it. And then we went on tour for 2 years on the Pride tour that just kept going and going, and the album kept selling and selling. And then the time came to do the Big Game album and stuff like that, and Vito and I wrote that album in a couple of days. Even though we had some ideas lying around, we basically wrote that album in 3 or 4 days. And obviously that's just not the way it should be. And we didn't have the guidance from record company or management to just say, hey, you know, let's do this the proper way. Let's really set this up. Instead, it was rushed. We were told that we have to get back out there, you know, and support the new album. And the album was released half a year after we just finished a 2-year tour, and we were back on the road. And there's a lot of great songs on the Big Game album, but it's an unfinished album.
So I've read 2 accounts of what happened in the end. One is that you just said goodbye at the airport, and because of maybe the onset of grunge, there was no phone, the phone didn't ring after that, and that was the end of the band. And I also read that that the band went bankrupt. I mean, what's the truth of that? What happened right in the end?
Well, I don't know whether you've ever read that the band went bankrupt. I mean, it was quite the opposite. We were doing quite well. It had nothing to do with anything but me looking over at Vito backstage when a technical problem happened, and we stood behind the amps and said, you know, Vito, when we play Boston next week, it's going to be the final show. And he just said to me, yes, okay. And then no words were ever spoken for the next 15 years about it.
So you suggested it. Why did you suggest it?
It was just a feeling that once I felt that record company abandoned us in the way of it had been in the past, and I saw the changes happening in the business, it didn't feel right anymore. James and Greg had been replaced with 2 other guys, and Vito and I's friendship, if we ever had a friendship besides us writing songs together, were not there. It was non-existing. It was 2 people living in 2 sides of the house, and it's just was not the reason why I was in rock and roll.
What do you make of the circuit at the moment? I'll let you go in a sec. What do you make of the circuit at the moment? A lot of bands getting back together, aren't they? Have been apart for a lot of years. There's cruises, there's sort of nostalgia festivals, all that sort of stuff going on at the moment. Good development, bad development? Do you like it? Do you not like it? What are your thoughts?
Well, I participate in what I want to participate, and I don't think there's anything wrong with what anybody does. But I think that a lot of people forget one thing is that what was then will never ever come again. There will never be another classic rock album that ended in 1991 from any bands. There will be no great big albums that will live on. It's just not going to exist. There'll never be classic rock. That classic rock belongs to the 60s, 70s, and the 80s. So in reality, you're sort of keeping the dinosaurs alive, even though their skin is peeling and they got, you know, arthritis and so on. So it's just the truth of the matter is that what was then will never come again. What is coming in the future will be here today, gone later today.
What about the bands who are playing that sort of music now, like the stuff that you like that's come out?
Or what bands are playing that kind of music today?
Like Airborne or The Answer, Crazy Leaks, I don't know.
Well, I mean, basically, I always explain the 80s that I think that at the end of the 80s killed the 80s because every band had cloned each other and copied each other that so many times. You know, you're from Australia yourself, you know about how surfers count the waves, and by the time you come to the 12th wave, it's safe to put your kid down at the beach. You know, it's nothing but just a splash of water. By the time the 80s had been copied to the 12th wave, it was just fucking peroxide and black leather pants, you know, with no songs. It was just a copy after a copy. So there was no originality left at the end of the 80s, and people just wanted alternative. You can't start, I mean, any bands calling themselves an 80s band today and coming out with that looks, it's only going to be so far. Please go ahead and do it, but you know, the 80s bands are from the 80s.
Yeah, okay. That's a great metaphor. You should be a rock critic. Thanks for your time, Mike, and one more song.
I'm just trying to survive, you know. You got to play it.